So when you're training two dogs, how should you go about all this? Well, I can tell you right now, it's not starting out just training those two dogs. It's starting individual, starting with that engagement, making sure that individually I can get one dog to understand, hey, I'm in this world with you. You're attached to this leash with me and you got to start to pay attention. So that could just be going for your walks, starting and stopping, having them understand when they feel that leash pressure, where do you go? You come back to me. When you do, you get something good. So start to ignore what we're around. If I change directions, got to pay attention to that. You got to stay engaged with me. This is how we start to get our dogs to ignore things we're around and just get to the basics, such as teaching them place. And here, even in this little exercise, we're gonna just work on the basics of sit and down, do a little puppy push-ups. What's good with this is we're also pairing it not only with a food lure and a hand signal, but also that leash guidance. I'm not shoving them to the ground. I'm not, strangling them and hooking them up. I'm just using a little bit of leash tension to guide them into those positions, in addition to a food lure in my hand signal going up or down. And the reason why we do it is because now I can challenge them a little bit more. Here, we're just gonna challenge them with duration and distance, being able to follow that hand signal, but now I'm far away. Guiding them into a heel. Again, we do this individually. I wanna make sure that these guys can understand that when I am guiding you to my side, you follow that hand, you spin properly into it. And even if I use the place as a target just to make it a little bit easier for them to understand that, hey, this is the motion, this is where you end up. And then again, here on our side, we're just practicing the same thing, sitting down, but from a different position. Because that's challenging to dogs. They could sit in front of you, lay down in front of you, but what about on the side? So we do both. I want to make sure that from the front and from the side that they can take direction in my guidance, and that's a clear picture. Then once I have all the basics together, I bring them together. Once I know that they can do things individually, now we just bring them together for the challenge of working side by side. And again, things that have helped us right now that we worked on previously, that leash tension. Let's say they start blowing me off or they get confused, I can use that leash tension to help communicate. That's really our first line of communication. Aside from anything I say, it's always going to be through body language or that leash that speaks to them first. So even just helping them out, luring them into this position, I kind of go back to some easy basics. I don't expect too much. The real challenge is we're together now. So you got to ignore what the other one's doing and you've got to pay attention and remember what we've worked on. Do a little desensitizing, make sure we got a solid down. And then all we're doing, we're staying in this little area. We're staying in this little area, making sure that we can turn, we can stop, they can feel that leash pressure, they can give me their engagement, do pretty much all these basics in this little area on this sidewalk. Once we conquer that, then we'll go further into the real world. But I want to make sure that first and foremost, I have these fundamentals down. I can communicate with these two together and that they're not going to feed off of one another to a point where, again, all that obedience goes out the window because the other one starts to get excited and then the other one starts to get excited. So again, work individually. Make sure you got that down, then bring them together. And this is just the process that you should be going to with two dogs so that you can be successful. And then you bring them out into the real world. So once we have all those commands down, we've got our handling skills down, now it's just, okay, well, there's distractions and there's a whole world around us. You still got to remember, keep that leash loose. You got to stay in position. So this is where I can use even just the leash to fix them from getting too far ahead. Again, it was easy on that little sidewalk where we were just running into the same distraction, same smell. It wasn't anything challenging, but now this is the first time we've come to this sidewalk, this crosswalk. There's a whole new mess of distractions to pay attention to, and more importantly, take them away from me, and they've got to ignore that. They can't be taken away from me. So now that we bring them into the real world, we can start to do things such as teaching them off-leash control, where we put them on some long leashes. We've taught them what that remote collar means individually. And what the collar means to them is, hey, you feel this? I need you to pay attention to me because you're going to be getting something good in return for paying attention to me. So when they feel that remote collar, they know that they just need to come and find me so I can give them some just direction or just a reward. And so here I'm dictating too when they're released and when they're not released. Here they're released, I tell them break, but then in the other sense, when we're just walking around, I can use that collar, I can use the leash, and I can start to clear up. Hey, just because you're smelling that smell or you see that dog does not mean that it's just go time. Doesn't mean it's play time. Doesn't mean you can just go do whatever you're feeling. You got to ignore that because that's obedience. Things that we're around, you've got to ignore. You can't just act impulsively on your first thought process. That's what saves us when we get into congested areas, especially when we have reactive dogs, which these two are reactive. They are friendly when it comes down to it and they actually get to say hi to somebody or another dog. They're always friendly. However, they're reactive, and that's because some of them have some insecurities. Some of them have a little bit of anxiety, which causes them to react. So when we get into a more congested place, you can see that anxiety come out. And the only thing we're going to make sure is before we get into this, we have our basics down. We can handle them, and they can understand what we're saying. So we keep stress out of the picture. We keep their anxiety down, and they know what we're asking of them. It's a lot easier in a more open environment where, especially when it comes to reactivity training, I can have them see what we're around, and I can start out far enough away where even though he's watching that dog and notoriously he would be reacting to that dog, I'm far away. I've been proactive. I've set him up to see this distraction. I've set him up in a down to where he technically has this position, this down position that he can't break. More importantly though, he's calm. He's far enough away at the start. So he can work. I don't need to tell him anything. What I am going to do though is mark and reward when he chooses to ignore something. So it really just takes the handler's proactivity. Here we're walking down the street. We see a pack of dogs. This is everyone's nightmare with a reactive dog or a pair of reactive dogs. So what do? Well, one, right here, this is where everyone's getting into trouble. I got one dog smelling, and then one dog is seeing the other dogs right on the verge to react. So as the handler and being proactive, I have to stop them at their threshold. I've got to make sure that they're not just distracted doing other things and then these dogs or whatever the situation is going to sneak up on them. I want their head up. I want them to be aware of what's going on around us, but also aware of me. And I'm going to be the one that's going to dictate, are we going closer to this distraction? Are we going to stop? Every single time that they're locked on, when you have your dog locked on to a distraction, you're breaking them off of that. You're not letting them go more impulsively forward on that thought process. And this is all a picture to them. So as we're walking down the street, this is very stressful. The only thing in front of them are those dogs. So that's the only thing that they are routinely going to pay attention to. And so your reactive dog's making a choice in their head. And if you let them continue to walk closer, you're just confirming that thought process, blowing past their threshold. And so as the handler and being proactive, I'm in control of all that. So I stop them. I see those ears go up. I see them going forward, ahead, and out of position. That's why it's so important to start with the short leash walk. Make sure your dog's walking loosely on the leash, because then you can stop a reaction solely through seeing, oh, my dog's getting a little excited, getting ahead of me, should be in position, but is getting to that point where he's thinking about it. And so again, here, now I am using the collar. I'm telling them to come because I'm in a situation where I don't think that they can make that choice on their own. And that's really the difference. Here we're on the sidewalk. I don't have space to set them up to succeed, so I just need to handle them. And so again, as we're getting closer to these dogs, the only thing I'm doing is stopping them with me, and then I'm rewarding them every single time they take their eyes off of the dog. And that's either prompted by me, or here, I'm not prompting them, but I've stopped them. And so I'm letting them calm down. I'm not forcing them to interact with these dogs, and that's clear to them, just solely through how I'm handling this situation. They're paying attention more to what I'm doing, and every single time they do pay attention to me, I'm rewarding them in some sort of way. So that could be food, toys, praise. Here I'm just praising them because I got a phone in one hand, a remote, and 2 leashes in the other. And so again, I'm keeping them from getting distracted. I also want to keep them engaged. They can see the other dogs. I'm not going to correct them for looking at the other dogs, but when they get too intense, I'm going to restrict that. I'm going to stop them from acting on it. And here we pass. We pass them. I even give them a little bump to the side so we can go around them. Again, I'm using the leash, I'm using my body language, I'm using the remote collar just to help guide them. And it's the duration that they can spend, especially here. There's a dog looking at you. Your dog has to be in this situation. They have to be exposed to this situation appropriately. So we didn't start out like this, but we worked our way to it. Now I trust this guy can see this dog looking at him and he can look away. And so now I reward that. As far as off-leash obedience goes, you know, if you've worked with me, I do not sell off-leash to everybody because not every dog should be off-leash. Here, these guys, after 4 days of working with me, I trust them to be off of the leash. We've taught a remote collar, so when in doubt, I always know that I have a line of communication that's remotely connecting me to them, and they have understood that when they feel the sensation that they come back to me. So here, there's a dog over there, and we're just making sure that we're not letting them get too distracted or too hyper-focused on what we're around. And every single time that they can see something and ignore it, or if I need to, I'll stop them from getting too hyper-focused on that thought process and not let them just connect the dots that they're used to in their brain where they see something and they just impulsively want to react to it. I'm controlling all this. And we're still around the dogs. They know that they're there. We're not running away, but I'm in control and I'm stopping them, and especially letting the duration, letting them see it and stay in the environment a little bit longer and appropriately, not pushing that threshold of stress too far, too fast. We're working around these distractions. This is what builds tolerance. This is what cuts down reactivity the most. So pick an open space, parks are great, and then work your way down to more congested areas like sidewalks or malls, because you want them to see and be able to make the choice to look away on their own. And then when they look away, big praise, and that's how we solve reactivity.